New York never slept. The towering skyscrapers blazed against the night sky, the streets pulsed with restless energy, and the city never seemed to pause, not even for a second. But to Ethan Hayes, all those bright lights only made the air feel suffocating. He sat in the luxurious boardroom, where the executives of Hayes Tech argued over stocks, profits, and numbers. Their faces were sharp, unreadable. None of them truly cared about the man behind the name Ethan Hayes. They only cared about the billionaire CEO, the one responsible for running an empire. He had once loved this life, but now it felt like nothing more than a gilded cage. The phone buzzed incessantly, emails flooded in, the media chased after him. It was a machine that never stopped. Today, Ethan stood up, loosened his expensive tie, and said only one thing: "I'm leaving." Silence fell across the room, but Ethan didn't care. He walked out of the building, got into his private car, and left New York that very night. His destination? A small town in Montana where no one knew his name. A place without meetings, without reporters, without the weight of expectations. A few days later, Ethan arrived. He bought a run-down wooden cabin by the lake, far away from the world he once ruled. His days, once consumed by corporate battles, were now filled with morning coffee, old books, and the quiet rhythm of waves against the shore. For the first time in years, Ethan felt at peace. Mornings in Montana were nothing like New York. No honking cars, no hurried footsteps, just the soft breeze over the lake and the distant calls of birds in the pines. Ethan stood on the porch of his wooden cabin, holding a steaming cup of coffee. The rich, bitter scent filled the crisp morning air. He took a slow breath. No schedules, no expectations, just him and the quiet. The cabin was nothing remarkable. Weathered wooden walls, a moss-covered roof, and inside a single bed, a small wooden table, and an old bookshelf. No TV, no phone, no internet. Ethan had severed all ties to his former world. His habits began to change. Instead of waking up to check emails, he sat on the porch with a book. Instead of discussing business strategies, he rowed a small boat onto the lake, watching the morning sun glisten on the water. The townspeople had started to notice him. They didn't know who he was, only that a man from the city had bought the old lakeside cabin and kept to himself. But in this town, no one pried too much. They greeted him when they passed, but no one pressed him for details about his past. One morning, as Ethan stopped by the town's small general store, he overheard two elderly women chatting nearby. "Who do you think he is? He doesn't look like he's from around here." "Probably just someone trying to find himself. Don't we all have something we're running from?" Ethan smirked slightly, picked up his bag of coffee, and walked outside. He didn't know how long he would stay, but for now, this was where he belonged. The late afternoon sky over Montana was painted in heavy shades of gray, the cold wind carrying the scent of rain. Ethan pulled his coat tighter as the first droplets landed on his shoulders. He hadn't planned to go far today, just a quick trip to town for more coffee, but the rain fell harder than expected. Ahead of him, a small wooden sign swung under the wind. "Willow Brew Coffee and Books." It was the only cafe still open at this hour. Ethan pushed the door open, the soft chime of a bell breaking the quiet. Inside, warmth embraced him. Golden light flickered against the wooden walls, decorated with paintings of landscapes. A bookshelf, filled with well-worn novels, stood in the corner. The rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee blended with the scent of burning wood from a small fireplace. Behind the counter, a woman was drying a glass. Claire Bennett, 30 years old. She had once been a writer, but had left the city to open this cafe, seeking a simpler life. Her soft brown hair was loosely tied at the nape of her neck, her blue eyes shining like the lake at dawn. When she noticed Ethan, she smiled warmly. "Escaping the rain?" she asked, her voice gentle. Ethan gave a small nod, pulling his cap lower. He didn't intend to make conversation, just wanted a quiet corner to wait out the storm. But Claire, with her quiet persistence, wasn't about to let him disappear so easily. She placed a cup of warm water in front of him without asking. "Consider it a welcome gift," she winked. Ethan looked at the cup, then at her. "I don't drink water." Claire chuckled, unfazed. "Then let me make you a coffee. No one should sit in the rain without something warm in their hands. Before Ethan could refuse, a loud crash shattered the peaceful atmosphere. In the corner, 3 drunk men knocked over a chair. One, tall and broad-shouldered, grabbed Claire's wrist. "Why so serious? Bring us more beer." He smirked. Claire pulled her hand back, her voice calm yet firm. "Please leave." But the man ignored her. Ethan's fingers tightened into fists, his sharp eyes darkening. He stood up, approaching with slow, measured steps, his voice low but commanding. "Let her go." The 3 men turned, ready to mock him, but when they met Ethan's piercing stare, their laughter died in their throats. The tall one swung his fist. Ethan easily sidestepped, and in one swift motion grabbed his arm and slammed him onto the table. Not too violent, but enough to make a point. The other 2 hesitated, suddenly wary. Ethan's voice remained steady, cold. "Get out, now." They exchanged glances, then stumbled toward the door, muttering curses as they left. Claire stood there, wide-eyed, a mixture of shock and gratitude on her face. "Thank you. I didn't expect you to be that strong." Ethan said nothing, simply returning to his seat, but as he prepared to leave, Claire stepped in front of him. "Wait, at least let me make you a coffee as a thank you, okay?" Ethan shook his head. No need. But Claire wasn't ready to let him go just yet. "Then at least tell me your name." "I'm Claire." He hesitated, then finally answered, "Ethan." Then, without another word, he stepped out into the rain. Claire watched his figure disappear into the downpour, his name lingering on her lips. Ethan. After that rainy night, Ethan found himself visiting Willowbrew more often. Not because he particularly liked coffee, but because for some reason, this place felt calmer than anywhere else. Claire always greeted him with a soft smile, but she never forced him to talk. She let him sit in silence reading his book, but still made sure to place a cup of black coffee in front of him, one he never refused. Gradually, Ethan started helping her fix things around the cafe. One afternoon, Claire was struggling with a jammed glass door, fumbling with a screwdriver, but unable to loosen the hinges. Ethan happened to be passing by. He considered ignoring it, but when he saw Claire almost drop the screwdriver, he stopped. "Need help?" he asked, his tone indifferent as if he didn't really care. Claire looked up and smiled when she recognized him. "Ethan, perfect timing. This door has been stuck for a week." Ethan sighed, set his grocery bag down, and took the screwdriver from her. With a few quick, precise movements, he removed the hinge, adjusted the frame, and reattached it as if there had never been a problem. Claire crossed her arms, watching him with admiration. "You're really good at this. Do you ever get bored living alone by the lake, or are you secretly a carpenter?" Ethan shrugged. "It's nothing." But as he turned to leave, Claire grabbed his wrist. "Wait, I still owe you a coffee as a thank you." This time, Ethan didn't refuse. Claire pulled out a chair for him, brewed a fresh cup of black coffee, and placed it in front of him with a beaming smile. "Now we're even. You've saved me twice already." They sat there, surrounded by the cafe's warmth. Claire began to talk about her dream, about why she left the city to open this place. "I wanted a place where people felt at home, a cafe that wasn't just for coffee, but for stories." Ethan listened quietly, saying little, but for the first time, his eyes softened as he listened to her speak. There was something about Claire that made him feel at peace in a way he hadn't in years. And for the first time in a long while, Ethan realized he no longer wanted to live in solitude. That night, the air was crisp, but inside the wooden cabin, the warmth was undeniable. Ethan and Claire sat close together on a small wooden bench, leaning against the wall, sharing the tiny screen of Ethan's phone, the only connection he still had to the world he had left behind. "You still have a phone?" Claire teased, grabbing another handful of popcorn. Ethan smirked. "Only for movies. No internet, no calls, no one to bother me." Claire smiled, enjoying the simplicity of the moment. There was something comforting about it. Two people watching a film together, laughing, feeling at ease. But the moment was short-lived. Suddenly the screen lit up, interrupting the movie. A message appeared. Assistant Jason. "Ethan, come back. We need you." The air in the cabin shifted instantly. Claire's smile disappeared. She turned to Ethan, her expression filled with shock and disappointment. "Ethan, You're not just some ordinary guy, are you? Ethan clenched his phone, but he didn't answer. His silence said it all. Claire stood up, placing the bag of popcorn on the table, her movements sharp with frustration. You hid this from me. She turned and walked out of the cabin, heading toward the lake, where the water lay still beneath the pale glow of the moon. Ethan sighed, set his phone down, and followed her. She sat on a rock near the water, arms crossed, her gaze fixed on the lake, as if trying to process everything. Claire, Ethan called softly, standing behind her. She didn't turn. Do you know what I hate the most, Ethan? Being lied to. Ethan exhaled deeply, then stepped forward and sat beside her. I didn't lie to you, I just didn't know how to tell you. Claire took a slow breath before finally facing him. Then tell me now. Who are you? Ethan hesitated for a moment, then spoke. I am Ethan Hayes. I used to run one of the biggest tech corporations in the country, Hayes Tech. Claire's eyes widened, but she remained silent, waiting for him to continue. I had everything. Money, power, a name people respected, but at what cost? Endless meetings, people who only cared about numbers, days that blurred into each other. Until one morning, I woke up and realized I couldn't remember the last time I was truly happy. He looked out at the water, his voice quieter. I felt trapped in a life I had built for myself. So, I walked away. No announcement, no explanations. I just disappeared. Claire studied him, and this time there was no anger in her eyes, only understanding. I wondered why a man like you would end up in this town. Now I know. Ethan let out a soft, almost bitter chuckle. I didn't find myself in those skyscrapers, but here, I started to feel like I could. A moment of silence passed between them, the night settling around them. But just then a small frog suddenly leaped across Claire's foot. "Ha!" Claire yelped, and without thinking she flung herself into Ethan's arms, clutching his shirt. Ethan froze for a second, then let out a low chuckle. The strong cafe owner is scared of a little frog? Claire shot him a glare, but her face was still flushed from the shock. Their eyes met. The world around them faded into the background, leaving only the two of them beneath the moonlit sky. Ethan gazed at her, his heart pounding in a way he hadn't felt in years. Then, without hesitation, he pulled her closer and kissed her. The kiss was slow, deep, filled with all the words he had never said out loud. Claire didn't pull away. She closed her eyes, melting into him, feeling the unspoken emotions in the warmth of his lips. The wind whispered over the lake, the moon reflecting on the water's surface, and in that moment, there were no more secrets between them. The next morning, as the first light of dawn slipped through the pines, Ethan woke earlier than usual. But today, his mind wasn't as quiet as before. He stood on the porch of his cabin, staring at his phone lying on the table. Jason's message from last night still lingered on the screen, a reminder that he couldn't hide forever. The sound of a door opening pulled him from his thoughts. Claire stepped out, a steaming cup of coffee in her hands. "You couldn't sleep?" she asked softly, handing the cup to him. Ethan took it but didn't drink. "I have to go." Claire froze, but she wasn't surprised. Because of the message last night? He nodded. "They won't stop looking for me unless I face them. I can't leave my past hanging over me forever." Claire stayed quiet for a moment, then reached for his hand. "Go, but don't forget, someone is waiting for you to come back." Ethan's eyes softened. He never expected that in just a few months, he would have a place to call home again. 2 days later, Ethan arrived in New York. The city was still restless, still loud, but to Ethan, it no longer felt like his world. He stepped inside Hayes Tech, the building that had once been his entire universe. Jason, his loyal assistant, stood waiting, his face a mix of shock and relief. "Jesus, Ethan, you actually came back." Ethan nodded, but his gaze was no longer that of a man trapped. He knew he had come to end things, not to stay. He walked into the boardroom, where the company's executives were already seated. The faces were familiar, yet now he saw them as an outsider. "I'm not here to reclaim my position," he spoke before anyone could say a word. Silence fell over the room. "I'm here to make it official. I'm stepping away. I'm not coming back. Let me go." Some of them protested, but Ethan had made up his mind. This time, no one could pull him back. Once the final documents were signed, Ethan stepped out of the building, taking a deep breath. For the first time, he felt truly free. And there was only one place he wanted to be, back by the peaceful lake with Claire. 1 week after leaving New York, Ethan drove back to Montana. The first time he arrived, he was a man on the run, but this time he returned as a man finding his way home. By the time he reached Willow Brew, the evening had settled in. The warm glow from the cafe's windows spilled onto the quiet street, carrying the familiar scent of coffee mixed with a crisp autumn breeze. He stepped inside. Claire was behind the counter, pouring a fresh cup of coffee. When she looked up, her eyes locked onto his. She froze, the spoon in her hand suspended in midair. Ethan said nothing. He simply smiled. In the next second, Claire dropped everything and ran toward him. Without hesitation, she threw herself into his arms, holding him tightly, as if afraid he would disappear again. "You came back," she whispered, voice trembling. Ethan pulled her close, feeling the warmth and belonging he had searched for his entire life. "I promised you, didn't I?" he whispered. Claire looked up at him, her eyes full of questions. Ethan chuckled softly. "I have nowhere else to go. This is home now." A few days later, Ethan invited Claire for a walk by the lake at sunset. The golden light reflected off the still water, painting the sky in warm hues. The air was crisp, the scent of pine lingering as they strolled along the shore. "If you hadn't come to this town, where do you think you'd be now?" Claire asked, her fingers intertwined with his. Ethan squeezed her hand gently, smiling as he gazed out over the lake. "Probably stuck in some office, probably never knowing what real happiness feels like." Then, suddenly, Ethan stopped walking. Claire turned to him, puzzled, until she saw him slowly kneel down on one knee. Her eyes widened in shock, her hands flying to cover her mouth. Ethan pulled a small velvet box from his pocket and opened it. Inside was a simple yet elegant silver ring, catching the last rays of the setting sun. His voice was steady, deep with emotion. "Claire Bennett," he began, "you are the best thing that has ever happened to me. You helped me find myself again. You showed me what home feels like." Claire's eyes shimmered with unshed tears as Ethan continued. "I can't promise you a perfect life, but I can promise that every day I will do everything I can to make you happy." He took a slow breath, his blue eyes locking onto hers. "Claire, will you marry me?" For a moment, Claire was speechless. Her heart pounded in her chest, tears slipping down her cheeks. Then she nodded fiercely, her voice breaking with emotion. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." Ethan grinned, slipping the ring onto her finger before standing up and pulling her into his arms. As laughter bubbled between them, he lifted her off the ground, spinning her in a circle as she held onto him tightly. The world around them blurred. It was just the two of them, beneath the endless Montana sky. After their engagement, Ethan and Claire began building a life together. They expanded Willow Brew, turning it into not just a cafe, but a place where people could share stories, find comfort, and rediscover themselves, just as Ethan had. The townspeople no longer questioned Ethan's past. To them, he was simply the man by the lake, the one who had fallen in love with Claire and found his home in their quiet little town. One evening, as they sat on the porch of their cabin, Claire took Ethan's hand and asked softly, "Did you ever think your life would turn out like this?" Ethan looked at her, smiled, and squeezed her hand gently. "No," he admitted, "but I know I made the right choice." Across the lake, the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in warm shades of orange and pink. And in that peaceful moment, Ethan knew he had finally found the happiness he had spent his entire life searching for. The story ends, but their love lasts forever.